Faith is so much easier when we are looking in the rearview mirror. And the kind of faith that has filled the pages of your Bible, the kind of faith that moves us forward and affects our future, is unconventional because it is blind and unknown. As a matter of fact, it leaves us in a bit of a predicament because without faith, it is impossible to please God, and yet the kind of faith that moves mountains can come with a sense of uncertainty. Yet this is the kind of faith that Bethesda is built on. From its humble beginnings at 207 New Gower Street in 1911, a small gathering of people with unconventional faith, the kind of faith that grew. And what is profoundly noticeable is that even though they couldn't see the future, even though it was unknown, they were obedient to a faithful God. And faith isn't about seeing, it is about trusting in a God who sees everything, even when we cannot see it. It's seen in the church that started small resources, but God was building a few people with big faith. They yearned to see what God could do in them. It started small, but that seed of faith grew because they practiced unconventional faith, blindly trusting in a God who sees everything, even when they could not. And they gave with a kind of generosity that built not only brick and mortar, but faith and passion for generations to come. They built a church that we hope to continue to be. And our legacy is the catalyst to risky, blind faith now. The reality that God places legacy and people in our paths to remind us of who He is still today, right now, in your life, in the vision and the future of this church, so that we will stay on mission, obedient and always faithful to the risky next steps for us. Our faith is built on their faith. We have stood on that pattern of faith from those who built Bethesda, who stood in the gap, who had faith when there was nothing to see, only the assurance that God was with them. And from its humble beginnings on New Gower Street and Aldershot to a congregation that has grown to over 700 with 66 plus nationalities, with so many lives impacted in between. That's what God does with small beginnings, but unconventional faith. So how do we build unconventional faith now? We place our trust in a God who sees everything, even though when we cannot. We step out unsure of the path, but sure who is guiding us forward. Like those before us, we have had a posture of unconventional generosity that gives in faith to a God who sees everything. We dream about a vision for this church that is so much bigger than us that it continues to drive us to our knees and rely on the only one that can really make this happen. Trusting, unsure, generous, and dreaming. That's how we build our faith in God who sees everything. So now we build. We are now the examples of faith for generations to come. We have faith moving forward for the future. We step out blindly in a God who sees everything. Because our legacy, those gone before us, have taught us, even though we cannot see it, He is at work. Because God takes small beginnings and through His power and our faith in Him turns it into something bigger than we could ever imagine. And so we celebrate the conclusion of our current debt. How's that for faith? Through your faithful generosity, through our monthly building fund offerings and our annual big gives, we will all be celebrating God's faithfulness, but we also want to step out in faith for whatever God has next by revisioning our building fund into a new fund entitled Forward Offering. And what that means is, like those who had faith before us, even though they couldn't see it, we now have faith moving forward for our future. And the reality is, as we begin to give in faith, we're not giving blindly. We just give in obedience because our faith is in a God who sees everything. So let's do this together. And I promise you, as we give in obedience, God will turn our small beginnings into a legacy for generations to come. Faith, forward, future. How exciting is that?